Hello, chat. How are y'all doing today? We are live now here also on the YouTubes. Yeah, and one of the things, especially about it, breaking out the channels, is it ends up just helping me out in terms of like the content that I like to cover and talk about. Because in a way, it's just letting kind of the algorithm work for me rather than having to sit here and press on and try to make it, do its thing. On my end, you're a little bit blurry, but on the stream, you look perfectly fine. So I don't know what's up the deal with that. So it is what it is. How is your day going, my friend?
It's good. I just finished the Warring Triad. I need to do the 5 extreme quests, but I'm done. I killed Zervan.
Nice. Congrats.
So it was a good day. It was a good day.
Absolutely. Well, happy Friday, everybody.
It
Absolutely.
has references to like Mercidia and stuff, and we
Yeah.
see some Mercidians, and we kind of get a feel for the relationship that like Alleg and Garlemald and Mercidia and like all these places have had with each other over
Over the
various points in
centuries. Yeah.
history.
Yeah.
And so that starts to kind of shift some things. It wasn't as profound as what like a raid story can be. So like Coils obviously
Mhm.
can punch a lot harder because there's a lot more fights. So I'll be doing Alexander and Void Arc next week, and I expect Alexander to hit harder just because it has more canvas. But this is the one that
Yeah.
gets referenced a lot, especially in the context of like we have an upcoming ultimate. And so as we look forward to 6.3 and beyond, and we start to look at like 7.0, where are we going? And Mercidia comes up as a potential candidate.
Mhm.
This is one of the Warring Triad is one of those storylines that gets referenced a lot. So I'm excited to kind of finally understand that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's gonna be interesting because I'm very curious to see as your thoughts on Alexander and to see if you end up having kind of the same enjoyment, kind of curve that I ended up having with that storyline. So I don't want to say anything
I know
to
I like the fights, and I know I like the
yeah, the
music
fights are
and the
great.
cosmetics because I've done all that a bunch of times.
Right.
But
You were doing it like I think a couple weeks ago, if not today, or I saw you've been hunting the achievements and the killing
yeah,
the bosses and stuff.
I'm flying up through the achievement ranks there. I'm at like 47,000 globally. So I'm only like 2,000 achievement points ahead of you,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm at like half your rank. Like I passed. So there's just as many people ahead of me as behind me when it comes to reference from like the highest achievements in the world versus you. You're at like 86,000. I'm at like 47,000
Great.
globally, and so like it really starts to thin out as I start to get really rare achievements. Your rarest achievement is having done 500 battle leave quests,
Oh yeah.
maybe 1,000 battle leave quests, one of those, because people don't do battle leaves anymore. So like that just
They ended
makes
us.
that
Yeah.
makes the percentage of characters that have that achievement just continue to plummet because we keep adding characters that are like, hey, what are these battle leaves? And everybody's like, don't do those. So for you to have done 1,000 of those is really representative of either somebody who's achievement hunting, or in your case, since you weren't, just somebody who played a lot in ARR. Because the number of things that could be done in ARR was a lot smaller than now.
Yeah, that's
Because
one
the
of the
game's gotten a
things
lot
that
bigger.
that's one of the things that like when they added in like the 10 stack leaves in Heaven's Word, because they actually still have the battle leaves that take part in Heaven's Word. I was really hopeful that this was going to kind of be some kind of open world challenge, endless kind of like, hey, spend this allowance and we're going to just throw enemies at you in the open world until either you die or you're tired, and I was like, because that was that because like one of the things that's unique about the leaves in the battle leaves that you don't really experience anymore in Final Fantasy 14 is the fact that people can actually watch. You can actually see that that's happening, what's going on. And I think essentially that you would weaken the challenge if they did something like that because somebody on the outside can heal you. But I think that ends up being something where you could actually say event flag or, we're not going to allow that interference from like anybody who's not in your party to do said content.
Yeah, the WoW Mage Tower system had a component where like you had to kind of like unlock it, and then I think you had to like pay for each attempt. And so this idea that you would get your allowances, they could have slowly upped it. So you maybe like invest
Yeah.
poetics in like, I get 50 allowances every 6 hours instead of 6 or 12 or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Or I get 100. But in trade for that, like I keep purchasing these higher and higher difficulty quests. And so I'm purchasing these like level 100 quests. And then I'm going to go try to do one. And I've got my 3 friends, and we're going to go do these 4-man Leves, and we're all going to purchase it. And just like treasure maps, we're going to opt in hopes that we get this big reward. But I think instead it gave way to other systems. So we ended up with exploratory zones.
Yeah.
We ended up with like single player duels. The deep dungeon system has really matured. So the criterion stuff has really kind of come out of something that wasn't existent. So like instead of investing in the Leave system, they just went different directions for where the challenging content is.
And I think a lot of that could also be baked into the Leave system and the statement of like, this is the content. That's what you get in 1.0, to Yoshi P saying like, this is no longer our driving force and factor. And then them just obviously when they made that shift in Stormblood, that's where it's like, you haven't, Leaves are just crafting a gathering for players. And then, you sit on the 100 allowances, and then occasionally you find a really good gill making opportunity and buying things and just turning them in for currency. But we've seen less and less in that as they've kind of adjusted some of those.
I kind of wish the tribal quests worked on the Leave allowances instead of dailies.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't like
an area for you. Like, isn't that a risk?
So you could manually time gate them when they first come out. So you could say when they first come out, it's only going to progress this far in week 1 and this far in week 2, so that people don't just blitz through it in one day or not. Like, who cares? Because there's no power lock behind them.
Right. You're not,
and there's nothing after the first 14 days of quests. So like once you've done the 30 or 40 quests or whatever, you're kind of done. And so if you want to burn 40 allowances, or you could just make them too expensive. So if tribal quests cost 15 Leaves a piece, then you can only have 100 saved up. So you can only do them so fast.
Yeah.
And then just give you, or 12 or whatever. So you can only do one a day. Because what I don't like is feeling like when a tribal quest first comes out, that like, if I want to take Saturday and Sunday off and go enjoy being outside and, go take my dog for a walk down by the lake or something like that, that I'm now like, oh crap, now when I come home, I have to remember to do my tribal dailies. And I think Leaves were a real opportunity to say, here's your window of time, and it's a rolling window. So you can play a little every day, or you can play a lot every few days, mix and match to whatever fits your life.
To your point, where like the fact is like you feel like you got to log in and have that touch point, right? We know that dailies increase the daily active user, but I think again, that's one of the things why when you look at dailies, the fact that you can finish them, there is an expiration. So it's not like, guys, you gotta like, if you want to play 14 tonight, you got 2 hours worth of chores to do, etc. So that's the nice thing about that 14 doesn't follow that model. But I think you're right. One of the things of like I think the allowance system, the Leave allowance system, as it's baked in, could be used for way more things because of that very fact. Like, oh, you couldn't play all week because you were gone, and well, hey, you got a full stack. You can do a little bit more, naturally, because you have that allowance system, and it is capped. So like, no matter what, you're not going to log in and be like, well, guys, I would, I'd like to catch up, but I've got, 7 days worth of me just hardcore grinding on these allowances.
WoW's moving. So they have weeklies. So does 14, and it resets on Tuesdays. But then they also have basically shifted their dailies to being like 3.5 days or something like that. So it resets midweek. So you have 3.5 days to do the daily, but like you can't save them. So it's almost there. But I really like the idea that if I only play on Saturdays, that's good enough.
Okay.
If I want to play for 10 hours on Saturday, that's fine. If I want to play 1 hour each day, that's fine. Like, whatever gets you there, that's what I would like to see from these games. And so like talking about 14's Leave system, it's weird that every once in a while you think of a solution. You're like, what we're working towards now in 2022 is like, maybe one day in the future, we could have a system that was in the game 8 years ago. And so it's like, you already had it. You had the solution. And it was doing very well. WoW's gone through a couple of cash systems where like basically you can play every day or every third day. And that's kind of, and then that like has slowly matured into where they are now. And where they are now, it feels, I'm not hating where Dragonflight is. Now I'm not on the edge of power. So maybe people on the edge of power feel a little bit differently, but I'm like that solid top end of where like crafted gear starts to slow down, which means at my level, there's like basically open world hunt equivalent ways of getting gear. There's open world PvP quest ways of getting equivalent gear. There's dungeons that are equivalent ways of getting gear. So I'm just now getting to the point where like the number of sources of gear has dropped from 10 to 4. And then from here, it's going to drop to 3 and then 2. And then you're just going to, and that starts to be like, that's that kind of base camp level where like I'm high enough up the mountain that I can look out over the land, but I haven't taken the time and energy to climb all the way to the peak. It's really where I'm pretty comfortable, right? Like I don't like climbing to the level where you need oxygen. I just want to be down here at the elevation that like I can live freely here. It wasn't too hard to get up here, but I feel proud of how far I've come. And then I can just wait for the next patch to get here, which tends to kind of crumble the mountain. And now the stuff that did need oxygen is a little bit easier. So they've got their tribes go up in rank all the way to 25 or 30 through a system called Renown. So reputation has like ranks. At rank 22, which nobody can be at yet. At rank 22, they start handing you gear that is currently only accessible through their kind of like criterion system. And so that starts to be like, okay, so if you just wait long enough, they'll hand it to you. So if you want to work hard, you will get a reward, but your reward is time. You're going to be powerful for time. And the joy of doing it. So it's a very limited reward that gives you something tactile to hold on to in trade for your hard work, because people actually enjoy the act of doing mythics. You just don't want to do it for no reason. Like Criterion was really well received, and Criterion Savage, like, yeah, I want to push through it, but you got to give me something. It doesn't have to be very big. Like, give me a hat that I'm not going to use. Give me a mount that's not my favorite. Like, I'm not asking for a lot. I'm just saying when I get to the end, I don't want to just be looking around and there's nobody to even like take my picture. Like just give me something. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. So, guys, if you're just joining us, this is Brian and Chris's segment on how to make Leves great again.
How to make Leves great again, man.
Let's make them great again. Chris, I saw this tweet and I sent it over to you, and you said this is pretty big news, and I'd like you to see if you can explain to me what's going on with World of Warcraft. But apparently, a big developer or somebody very well known or well renowned within the community has returned to World of Warcraft. Could you give me a summary of what has happened? Why is it important, and how I could probably understand it as somebody who isn't into the WoW scene?
Yeah, so there has been an idea at Blizzard lately that like we need to swap out leadership and get away from the legends of old. But there are a couple legends of old that weren't really hit by all that. And one of those is Chris Metzen. And Chris Metzen was around before World of Warcraft was like a Warcraft franchise. So we're talking way back. So in Final Fantasy terms, this is very much like a Sakaguchi. And there is like a Christy Golden around who does a lot of the writing. And so that would be kind of like your Ishikawa, but different. But like we're just trying to draw parallels here. And so like she's involved. And so there are these people, but imagine if you could bring back Sakaguchi in a leadership role to be kind of like the sound of his job description sounds like kind of like a mentor to the staff, and say like, hey, we have a lot of new systems. We're trying to get back to the way things really used to be as far as quality of content and the pace of content and players having fun inside Azeroth. And so you bring him back as you kind of rebuild this epic team. And so imagine if Yoshi P announced that, hey, we've got a lot of new systems, we've got a whole new narrative. And as we look to make some massive changes to the battle system to get back to previous iterations of the battle system, a lot of these big changes like talent trees and all that, they're not new. They're just new if you haven't been around a long time. And so Chris Metzen coming back is a huge deal. There are a lot of people that, as a longtime story skipper, I still know who it is. And there are a lot of people who feel that the narrative texture of Azeroth, the feel that parts of that had kind of died when people like Chris Metzen stepped away. He continued to be involved as like a voice actor. And so he continued to be around and voice his, like the character I've always associated with him, Thrall, who's like one of our war chiefs. But then, just like Chris Metzen, Thrall kind of steps away from the narrative after a while. So it's kind of like if Sakaguchi had been the voice of Emmett Selk, and then like Endwalker happens and you're like, and then that was the last we heard from that for a while. So, Thrall's always been like a beloved character for me, even as a story skipper, just because he was always around. Like, I still like the cutscenes. You don't have to read every quest to like the cutscenes. And so it's a big deal. It's the expansion's been well received so far. We'll see coming out of Race for World First. And as the Mythic season kind of settles into the first couple weeks, the first 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever, always has this massive spike in interest in Mythic Plus. And then you realize, okay, to move on beyond this, you need to do the same 8 or 10 or whatever dungeons at higher difficulties. And that's not going to appeal to the same number of people that like doing it at higher difficulties and doing it because it's new. Like new is fun. And so they're like the beginning always has inflated numbers. And so once that settles into like how many people really want to see the season out, various seasons over the years have had different retention rates. And as we get out of the raids, we're going to see like what the health of Dragonflight is. You don't want to have bad health early on. Like this is home field advantage. So it's good, but like that doesn't, all that means is they haven't screwed it up. Because an expansion is not made by its first 2 weeks, but it's also not broken by its first 2 weeks. So
yeah, exactly.
Off to good starts, but new content is fun for everybody. I've even seen a lot of people who said that they weren't going to play Dragonflight have been enjoying a lot of Dragonflight.
Yeah.
And so that's like, and that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Like,
There's nothing wrong with it.
We don't need to like drag them out in the square and lash them for deciding to play.
All that is gamers will game. Like you make a good game. Like what Chris and my's, mantra, what we hammer over, like with anybody who's like says that they're upset about monetization or they're upset about whatever. It's like, if the game is good, you will play it. Like you can, individually, maybe one person has made a stand and they stick to that. But ultimately there is a draw, especially in these multiplayer communal conversation pieces that continue on. And if the game is good gameplay trumps many, many things, and that's not to say that that's bad. It's to say that the majority, the vast overwhelming in terms of numbers that maybe don't communicate on every video or leave a comment or tweet or talk about it in a public space, the overwhelmingly vast majority of people use gaming as a form of escapism, as a form of enjoyment, as a downtime. It's not necessarily all about, like what the internet necessarily cares at any one particular moment, because loot boxes still exist. And that, like, that's the fact. And we're going to talk about that actually today, especially when we start talking about Blue Protocol. But yeah.
The good game armor really matters. And it's because, especially with live service games, so you and I talk a lot about MMORPGs, and MMORPGs are a relationship. It's not, it's not buy Cyberpunk or don't buy Cyberpunk. It's not buy God of War or don't buy God of War. It's a character that you have thousands of hours in. And so trust is earned and gained slowly over time. And so if you have a friend that says something rude to you, you don't just stop being friend on a dime, because you built a relationship with them. You tell them that your feelings were hurt. Hopefully they correct it. If they don't, then that just kind of lingers and festers for a while until one of you just decides to make it not a big deal anymore, I guess. And so it's this lingering thing. And so when somebody like Square Enix comes out and says, hey, we're super interested in NFTs, there are a lot of people like, hey, that kind of hurt my feelings. And they get to have that discussion. But when you have a game that has, where Blizzard was, where you find out that there's awful things going on in person to some of the people that work on this game, and then they've continued to not maintain the content of the game, and then they've continued to lash out at various content creators, and like at every stage it just feels like they're hurting you, then that very same statement is not a friend anymore. That's somebody being rude to you that has done everything to make your life worse. And so at that point, it's easy to leave. And so like the good game portion is that like, I enjoy spending time with this person. And so like I have had friends who I strongly disagree with politically, and we have different upbringings. And so we don't have a lot of common ground. And there are many times that like the time we spend together is what allows those to be something that we like navigate. So like we enjoy going and riding a bike together, or we enjoy playing video games. A lot of my friends I met through video games, whether we still play them together or not. A lot of them I met through video games. And so that allows me to have a political discussion with them where we can try to come to common ground, because I have something to base off of. So that good game armor even applies to like some of my real life relationships, where like, if I enjoy playing games with them, that's allowed me to put up with things that I would not have put up with somebody who I don't spend time with outside of that heated discussion.
Yeah, there's no like, what's the shared DNA? What's the common ground that everybody can kind of get to? Because then you can always have those difficult conversations, but you always have a kind of something that's rooted, that's connective, rather than being like, we're completely like talking two different languages. That's completely, now not to roll around too much in the mud, especially when it comes to WoW. But Chris here, like, is he like a part of the old guard? Like when we start to look at like the shifts and the issues that Blizzard faced like, again, I don't want to spend too much time with it because we've
Yeah.
already covered it plenty, but when we start to look at that shift, like, would we consider him a part of the old guard where these problems were, or is this also them really redefining like who they are as a company? Because at the end of the day, like, they've replaced people, like people have been, removed, and there has been sweeping change. Whether it hits the bar of it's enough change, everybody's going to have that different paradigm. What do you think?
He's far enough back that I think anybody who's been around a long time doesn't associate him with some of this. And so I think that's going to be a case by case basis for each person. There are going to be people that believe that nobody who has ever worked there or did work there at the time could be there, that we just need to gut it one person at a time and just move over to an entirely new employee base with the same name on the sign. Some people believe burn the sign down. Like burn down the whole building and just start from scratch, new dev studio. People can all go work somewhere else. And so like for each person, it's going to be a different threshold. But I think for a lot of people, this is mostly good news. I think Chris Metzen coming back. I saw like Scott Zone was excited about it. Bellular was excited about it. Like I see these names, like when you look at people who have had a long and deep relationship with the franchise, Chris Metzen is a name that is associated with good. It is associated with quality. It is associated with ideally some transparency. And so like I think that's really I think it's a good thing. So I wouldn't associate it with that idea of like if like Afrasabi came back. I think if Afrasabi came back, that would feel like, oh, so none of this mattered. And so it depends on the person, and it depends on how many. Bringing back one or two people, this is like Final Fantasy bringing Sakaguchi to work on Final Fantasy 14. That's not the same as saying, and we are so excited that we are opening up a new building for Final Fantasy 14 to house that we have actually brought back every single person that worked on 1.0 in their original position. And you'd be like, whoa, like I get that some of them are nice people and you liked working with them, but 1.0 didn't turn out well. Like maybe we shouldn't be trying to recreate that. Like I get, but maybe that shouldn't be the objective. This is saying one or two people still have a lot of value, and he's gone off and done other things. Last I saw he was going to come out with his own like mini war gaming company and stuff like that. So like he's gone off and had other, I guess, career aspirations outside of this. So I am interested to see like why did he come back? Because from where I think he sits and how long he's been around the industry, it has to be more than just money.
Right. Like at some point you reach a point where you're like,
he doesn't
creative control, like, right. Like, it's like, I want to be able to, like, okay, yes, I'm working for you, but, and then also in midst of the potential Microsoft Blizzard Activision Blizzard acquisition, like knowing that your company might or might not be acquired, like, I wonder how those contracts end up being, kind of labeled, because like, you don't want to sit here and come back and then, but it's not like Microsoft has any say in the matter until they close.
The only statement that we have so far is the statement that he's coming back, and they said he's going to start by working on World of Warcraft, but that he is supposed to be having a role that is over Warcraft as a franchise.
Ooh, cool.
And so Reforged didn't turn out well, but like Warcraft 1 through 3, like there's been some great stuff within that franchise. So when we look at people who call for things like a World of Warcraft 2, when we look at people who call for another stab at Reforged, because that just kind of really dropped the ball on expectations. When we look at all the things that the Warcraft franchise can cover, the Warcraft franchise, I believe in Preach's video, they said that it was over 250 million people have been impacted by spending time with the Warcraft franchise. And so as we start to look at if they have a Netflix show, something like that, as we see like Henry Cavill working with Amazon on like a Warhammer show, like Warhammer stuff, like when we look at all these things coming to being, how big of a narrative and like creative director, whatever the phrase was, it'd be a big deal. Right. And is he in danger if the Microsoft deal fully falls through? My understanding is that's currently an appeal. Yeah.
All right. Hard pivot, because you said something and we've never really talked about it, but it sounds like also Henry Cavill is not going to be Superman, where that was essentially assumed. And it looks like the DCEU is either being overhauled, completely thrown out. And I'm going to tell you, hands down, as I was like hearing about this on the way home from dropping off Maddie at school this morning, I'm personally very excited. James Gunn has taken over as kind of the big overall arching like narrative universe director. But here they are in a really weird spot. It's coming out news. I don't know if you've seen this, but it seems like they were falsely reporting the numbers that Black Adam brought in, and that was barely, if at all, profitable. Obviously, Warner Brothers, Max, all of them, like financially, I was like, this is a weird, like, I'm just waiting for somebody else to come in and just be like, all right, we're gonna own you now because your value has dropped by billions and millions of dollars. But on that same note, like, we know they have Shazam 2 in the works. We also know that The Flash is literally as a movie and a franchise and an actor, like, that is already feels like it's just gonna run into a trash can no matter what. I don't think there's anything that saves that movie regardless.
No,
so I'm just wondering if James
Gunn's
Gunn's coming in
tied
and
a
saying,
lot to one person when it comes to the Flash franchise.
yeah,
So
especially with the Flash, especially with the character the Flash.
When that person makes some choices off screen that change the image that much, that's really hard for the creative IP to not suffer as a consequence, right? Like, does he deserve consequences? Absolutely. Does an imaginary person that he plays deserve consequences? I don't know, but
how do you divorce the art though from the artist, right?
Because I mean, you try, like,
I struggle with
Fantastic
Cosby.
Beasts when all of the Johnny Depp stuff was going on.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to make a change there, and so, like, you try, but it's hard, right? You tie to these people, and that's why a lot of these contracts have moral and ethical clauses. That's why those are in there, to protect them so that they can try to not have a death sentence for an imaginary person just because a real life person made choices.
I honestly, at this point, like, I don't know if I guess you released Shazam because it's finished. The problem that they ran out was they actually ran out of money for marketing. And so they didn't have any money to market it. So they pushed it to 2023. I actually am looking forward to Shazam 2. I enjoyed Shazam 1. I have yet to see Black Adam just because I'm a parent and I don't go to the movies. I wait till the movies come to me.
Isn't it on HBO right now?
I don't know. I don't have HBO.
I think it's on HBO.
All right. So beyond that, though, you still then have the question of Flash. Like, I'm wondering, it's like, do you just kind of like say, hey, they're on our streaming service? Because we don't want to spend the money on marketing. Because if Gunn is coming in and literally just going to overhaul the entire DC, universe, if he's just coming in saying, hey, guess what? Blank slate, we're going to go. They canceled Wonder Woman 3. Like, he's like, all right, if he's got full creative control and he's like, we're going to execute on a vision, we might bring in some actors, but if they're not bringing in Cavill, like, that sounds to me like you're going to just reboot Superman from the ground up. And if Superman's already in these other things, like, how do you piece together the vase? It's been broken 30 times
about all these reboots.
Exactly.
Like, every actor that plays Batman has to make a different grungy origin story. And, like, at a certain point, I don't care if you think yours is better. I don't need 19 of them.
Right.
Like, it's so hard to keep caring.
Right.
So Superman's gonna have the same issue. And Superman as a hero is not my favorite. They're better. He's faster than the Flash. He's stronger than, like if you could take anything. DC Marvel compromise. You're like, oh, and we have the Hulk standing next to Superman. Well, thank goodness Superman's here because he's stronger than the Hulk. And you're like, oh, wow. So what are we going to do? Somehow we now have a collab with the Fantastic Four. It's okay. He's smarter than him. Like, and he has lasers for eyes because we've now got a collab with the X-Men. And it just, Superman is invincible. And then it's not good writing compared to some of these other people that have, like, a weakness where they have to, like, rely on other people. So
green glowy rocks.
So my investment in the way that actor played it and then the relationships that actor brought on screen is what keeps it interesting. So I don't know how many times you get to keep swapping it out. So whoever they replace Cavill with, you got to hold on to him for a while. This can't be like one and done. Like, some of the bonds have been really short.
You got to hold on to him for a while, but that's to the point where it's like, if you're literally just going to go ahead and say, we're going to have a new person who's acting as Superman, I think that's all of a sudden you're like, listen, everything that's come before it, we're just retiring that. Like, we're just going to start a brand new universe and we're going to start it from this point forward. My question ends up being is like, is it from Shazam 2 for it? Like, are you going to sit here and say, okay, these are the 3 movies that we're picking from the past to preserve as a part of our new universe? Or are we just literally just going to say, all right, guys, listen, there's nothing we can really salvage because it's all broken up in parts. And
You
so,
got to go
like,
new.
yeah, I say you go brand stinking new with this. Once, like if Cavill was there, then I was like, okay, you can start to say like, here's what's canon from these movies, and yes, it was all kind of this Wild West, but now we have a clear vision. It's the same thing with the same complaint I had with the Star Wars movies 7, 8, 9. I was like, there's no, it doesn't feel like any of these are connected because there was no clear
There's
directive.
other universes we haven't finished exploring. What's the one with Bruce Willis? The Unbreakable or Invincible or whatever he's called. Like
Yeah,
there are other,
yeah.
So there's other universes that we don't have 97 of the same movie of. Like I don't know why we have to keep going back to the same 3 franchises. Like why Amazon has to pay $250 million to go Lord of the Rings, and then step 1 is like, okay, so we don't know how canonical we're going to be. Then why did you pay for it? Like there were other fantasy universes that were bound to be cheaper. Like it just like, come on, guys.
Mm-hmm.
These can't be the only comic books that could be turned into something if you're going to have to rewrite movies that have been released 13, 14 times. Like it just starts to feel like at a certain point, Batman and Superman are like, well, if the Land Before Time can make 23 movies, so can we.
I just want them to do it right. I never felt respected within a DC movie, and they were also so wildly inconsistent because I was like, oh, I actually really enjoyed James Gunn's Suicide Squad. That's a standout. I enjoyed Shazam, and then like everything else is like, oh, I enjoyed Wonder Woman 1. But Wonder Woman, like, and then the naming convention, it's like, and then all of a sudden you're saying that there's this guy, spoiler alert for the internet, if you have not seen Wonder Woman 84. So you're telling me there's a guy who can grant wishes and he has a global impact. And yet in any movie that we've seen that has happened timeline after this connected universe has no memory or reference or knowledge of it, not even a hint of, hey, remember when we were wishing for stuff and it happened and then something bad happened? Like, I was like, what are you doing to me? And I tell you this, because anybody who's ever asked for my movie reviews, I'm the worst YouTube movie reviewer. That's why I don't have a channel that does it, is because I'm either entertained or I'm not. And I was like, generally speaking, I was entertaining. All right, I'll move on to the next thing. I'm not that invested. I do really enjoy movies, so I'm a bad movie critic. Thank goodness I don't make that kind of content. But oh my goodness, there are some canonical things that I'm just like, I can suspend disbelief to a wide array, but wishing on the entire planet, wild. That was cool. That was fun. Why the hell did you set it in 1984? Especially with the whole thing. It makes me mad at the DCU. I really, really want them to say,
well, there's another event where somebody wished for everybody to forget it and for her to no longer be able to fly so that she wouldn't be able to do that later.
Oh yeah. That's what happened.
Yeah.
That's the reason.
And in the process, they accidentally invented companies that made flying more complex so that somebody who flew like the world's first airplane couldn't just get in a fighter jet and know how it works. Yeah. People got off on like a whole narrative thread about like something fantastical and whether or not like body swapping the ethical concerns. And it's like, I would love for that to be that I felt so immersed in this world that I got to ask ethical questions. But the world was so fragmented from the very start that it's like the whole thing doesn't feel real. So I didn't feel like real people were affected by real things ever, as opposed to like when I get to sit and talk about the motivations of somebody, that's because I feel they're a real person that I had like a real parasocial relationship with. And it's like, no, that person. And I know when they were born and how they were raised. And like, I get to talk about how they felt and what they were like in this moment. None of that was real because the entire thing felt like the Matrix, where it's like, well, it wasn't real anyway. So ethical concerns don't bother me as much because the whole thing was just so stupid. Like I would love for it. Like it just, I don't know. As opposed to like, I get really mad about like the word consent was thrown around. I get really mad about the consent within Final Fantasy 14 when we get in like Sastasha, because I felt that those were real people whose real free will was taken away. and I get really upset about it. But I didn't feel like, Gal Gadot's Fever Dream put me in the same spot.
Oh yeah, 100%. And anyway, so I know James Gunn isn't watching this, but if for some random algorithmic go get it, dude. Like, just make it great, please. We really want to see an amazing time.
If it were me, I would just make it good. Thank you. So that's our suggestion. Thank you, and welcome to James Gunn, our newest follower. We really appreciate you joining the community, and we appreciate you coming and hanging out. Lurkers are welcome.
We love the lurks,
stream
man.
Monday through Friday, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, we will be the official funnel of all subtext within the DCEU to James Gunn, who is now the biggest lurker. I can't even get it out right. Like, oh my gosh. Oh, what a great moment. Hold on. Let me recenter. Video games. All right, let's do it. Okay. Oh, wow. Just make it good. We fixed the problems, guys. Oh, just hire the good writers. No, I'm really excited for James Gunn's DC run, and I really hope that it's well received and profitable, because then that means it can continue. So, yeah, I'm rooting for that. I think that'll be great. So, let me go ahead and actually put a banner in here so that editor Chris can end up having an easier time. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Work to Game. Brian and Chris here as a part of our live show. Just coming off a killer of a topic. We really hope you check out the live stream about James Gunn. It was great. It was a great moment. But if you guys enjoyed these videos, be sure to hit that like button. Today, we're going to be catching you guys up on all thing that was announced. And in the second part, it's probably going to be a two-part clip. I'm going to talk to Chris about kind of censorship concerns, monetization. Will also be talked about probably in this video, because generally the community has a couple of fears because Amazon is the publisher. And I was going to say, as the last segment, I do kind of wonder if Amazon ends up sweeping up HBO as well. Like, they're just in an acquisition M&A phase. So that's going to be something interesting to see as it plays out. But Chris, I saw that you watched it and reacted to my Blue Protocol dev update summary number 6. So I don't need to download all the information into your head. But for anybody who is just fundamentally curious, what is Blue Protocol? It's an upcoming online action MMORPG from Bandi-Namco for the global community, not accounting apparently the SEA region for some reason. That's an Amazon thing, I think. It's going to be published by Amazon here globally, and essentially it's going to be released on all platforms: PS5, Xbox One, or now Xbox Series, and then obviously PC, supporting controller support. And the devs first out of the gate commented that crossplay, cross-save is something they're working on, but they're not yet 100% sure they're going to be delivering on that. It also has a serverless architecture, basically drop in, drop out multiplayer. So there's not going to be a Blue Protocol server command for Work to Game when we're kicking back and playing this game. So it sounds a la very Destiny 2. But in terms of the content, we're gonna keep covering that, and I'm looking forward to playing it. But most likely we'll see the beta in the spring and a release in the fall. And what I would like to talk to Chris about as part of a discussion, though, is we've seen more about their monetization system, and it really almost directly reflects, until we go hands-on, I wouldn't say that if you've ever played Phantasy Star Online 2, you're going to know what the monetization system is. It does have a gacha, cosmetic, and mount system. And from everything that you've already seen from the video, Chris, now that I've caught, I think, everybody up at the key points, so that way they don't have to go watch endless amounts of content from us, but they're welcome to like and subscribe. But is there anything that stands out to you as positive, negative? We have seen loot boxes not go away, and that's what the gacha system ends up being. And it still is a persistent thing, despite I think a few years ago, it kind of felt like there was a movement to get rid of them, but that seems to have fizzled out. What are your thoughts, man?
I mean, it's about trust, right? What is it? What does the company in charge plan to use it for? And can they be trusted to consistently do that? Mm-hmm. And so Bandai Namco, when I think back to my first experiences with Bandai Namco, Pac-Man comes to mind. And Pac-Man is a game that is designed to eat quarters. It's a fun game, but its objective is to see how many quarters are in your pocket by eating all of them. And it knows that you have run out of quarters when you stop playing. But then, like, when I look at, we just came off the Game Awards, and I look at like the Souls game and Elden Ring, that's a very different monetization strategy. We're just going to sell you a game that's real good, and you just enjoy it as long as your heart's content. And so, like, that's the same game. The other person in the room that has control over money and localization is the publisher. The publisher is Amazon, but specifically Amazon Game Services. So it has nothing to do with your feelings on AWS or on Amazon, the company that made Ring of Power, or on Amazon, the company that probably shipped you something to your door this morning. AGS has kind of been its own thing. And so, like, their big claim to fame right now is New World. And New World, from a monetization strategy, whether you like New World or not, they released a game. That game was not perfect on launch. No game is. They continually updated that game while trying to fix bugs, while consistently communicating, are now in patch 1.8, have dropped huge content drops, and have not really charged money for it. They do have a monetization strategy in practice, but if you wanted to pick that game up for $40 and just keep playing it, you could. And it's regularly gone on sale during these big, like, Twitch events and stuff where they try to drive hype to the game. And so, like, I've seen a lot of people get in for $20. And at $20,
it's free now. Like, right now, at the time of this recording, until the 19th of December, you can play New World for free. Somebody told me they had, because of me, this was a positive comment too. They have over 2,100 hours in the game, and they've spent $40.
But
and
like,
yes,
at $20, at $40 at full price, because nobody should be paying more than $40. So at $40, knowing that theoretically lower numbers are available, at $40, just the, like, shooting rabbits, chopping down trees, and the voice acted narrative would be a full featured game. So if you're like, I don't want to do the PvP, I don't want to engage in game, because we follow a $1 per hour rule. So like, Amazon, in my perspective, when it comes to AGS, has that ability for me to see, and they release new servers if they need to, and they communicate regularly. And so, like, I don't see any reason not to trust them, with the amount of trust that a game can earn in, effectively, what are they, like 18 months old now? So, and so, like, there it is. They have 18 months of history. That's their credit score. And so when somebody comes in and says, like, oh, but I've been playing, what's the game? You have some codes to give away sometime soon, right?
I do. Yes.
And so, like, but it's a game that's like 2 months old. And so the amount of trust you earn, obviously 18 months, more than the 2-month game, will be giving away some codes, but less than something like Square Enix, where you may have what feels like a lifetime of interactions with that publisher, because Amazon Game Services is still a relatively young company. But so far, like, I haven't seen any reason not to trust them, especially with a franchise that I'm not invested in. It would be more concerning if they were taking over 14, where I'm like, if they screw this up, I lose something. This is like, if they screw this up, I lose a game that I hadn't played. So fairly low risk. So I don't see any reason to be concerned with it being on the worst end of things. Like, I play mobile games, but I feel that Diablo Immortal was on the worst end of what mobile games do. I don't see any reason to think this will be on the worst end of loot boxes. So unless you're just somebody who's, like, anti-loot boxes at all, this is probably going to be a typical market average interpretation of what those are, which ideally is cool looking mounts, cool looking armor, in addition to the game also having cool looking mounts and cool looking armor available for playtime.
And AGS already does have a standing public, they published Lost Ark here, and that has led to some people, like, concerns, and that usually ties into, they're going to change how some of the outfits look. They're going to try and make this, because the AGS has come out and said they're not hiding it. They're like, we're going to make sure that this game has tastes that are acceptable to kind of Western cultures. And back to the monetization, we might have to, like, hold the censorship, discussion for, like, another video, another live stream show, because that could be a bigger topic in and of itself. We'll just see how long we talk about this one. 22 minutes later. But at its core, the monetization in the West and how we think of it versus something like where you look at China and Korea. I've been told numerous times that people, like, in China, like, they're just like, why can't I just buy this, right? Like, let me just bypass some of this stuff and go ahead and purchase it. And that seems to be very acceptable, where, like they have to continue, and we'll have to continue to hammer home that this is not pay to win. This is not pay to win. And that's going to be a natural concern because I think gamers have all of a sudden, like, we know that, like, hey, it's free. How are they going to get me? Like, you end up coming in more with this trepidation as opposed to like something where in New World, it literally says $40 and go nuts. You know, like we're not going to ask you for money again. Whereas in something like this, it's like, hey, there's, you know, like this or there's that. You know, hey, maybe you want to pony up a little bit of that moolah, you know, and it's like sometimes, especially like my only concern when it comes to something like the loot box specifically is I've been playing the Hot Wheels game with my kids. Absolutely great game. However, one aspect of it is it's very loot box driven. And when it comes to the kids, they don't connect opening random box equaling reward. It is an exciting thing. It creates a moment of excitement because you don't know what you're going to get. That's why loot boxes were so successful, is because it has that moment. And they have yet to hit the drop in terms of like, I'm not getting the car that I want. We're not unlocking that. And then not having that option to go out and just say, hey, that car's like $20, you know, as opposed to like, you can keep trying for this, you know, this fee. And myself as a parent, I'm like, I wish I could just say, just give them everything. Like, I'd rather just buy all the cars and we can play with all the cars and have a fun time for one fee. Is it $100? Okay, great. Is it $250? Just pick the price, right? Like, and that's where like there's a parent relationship. And as somebody who knows people who have gambling issues, like I can understand, like, yeah, if you got a gambling problem, this is not the thing that needs to trigger you, but nor should that then dictate how the rest of the market, you know, demands are met, right? Like you shouldn't say like, well, we can never sell alcohol again because some people will have a problem drinking alcohol. Like there has to be a level of personal responsibility that comes into any monetization choice.
I prefer the a la carte method where I have a predetermined menu and I can see all the prices up front. And I know that I'm going to be purchasing each item. When you go to a fair or when you go to a restaurant, you know each item and how it's going to be priced. Or I prefer the price fixed, that whatever that French word is, where I just sit down and it's a predetermined experience. Sometimes our city here in Dallas does like a restaurant week, and you can buy these coupons online, and they're like $50 or whatever. And sometimes like the nicer restaurants, it might be $50 a person. So then my wife and I have to pay $100 if we want to participate. And we did it once. We went to a really fancy restaurant, and they brought out, and you got like, it came with a glass of wine, and it came with your choice of the following 3 appetizers, and it came with your choice of the following 3 entrees. And it's like, I knew what I was getting right when I showed up. Because otherwise those really expensive restaurants kind of intimidate me because I never know how much. And it's like $100 is a lot of money for a meal, but I know going in, it's going to stop at $100. I know that going in, I know the valet is covered. I know all of that's covered. So I know going in, I'm just going to have to tip the waiter at the end and I'm done. And I'm not going to get to the end and go, wait, why did it say 140? It's like, dude, what the heck? And so I prefer that kind of either all-inclusive mentality or the individual. But sometimes what you want comes from a place that doesn't have a monetization you like. And so like I have been invited to go out with friends I enjoy to charity banquets. And they said, hey, my company bought a table with 8 seats and we have 2 extra tickets. Would you and your wife like to come? It's a people I enjoy spending an evening with. There's going to be dancing. There's going to be food. It's going to be great. So I go. But I know by going to those charity benefits, while I love that they exist and they support charity, I know that those charity benefits in particular tend to be this like, I get asked for money every 5 minutes because they don't just ask you at the door. And it's not just that you're raffle tickets. The ones I've been to, like I'm just continually being asked to bid, and then I'm being asked to donate, and then I'm being asked. And so I just know that going in, and I have a great time, and I know that, but I like knowing what the monetization is coming forward. So if it's going to be outside of my preferred monetization, I still go to those events. And then we buy the raffle tickets to get the one random bottle of wine and trade for supporting some charity. And you end up spending $20 on raffle tickets to get a $15 bottle of wine, but it's fine. It goes to a good cause. It's great. But that monetization strategy, I wanted to know that before I showed up. If those friends had said, hey, I have this all-inclusive dinner thing, and I showed up and then it was one of those benefits, I really wouldn't have enjoyed feeling like that got ripped out from under me. It's like, whoa, you just brought me here to ask me for money. That doesn't feel good at all. So I appreciate the Blue Protocols being this transparent up front, saying, this is going to be something where we're continually asking you for money. And so, going in, like I play all sorts of games on my phone, but I know going in that they're going to ask me for money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where you end up seeing the most kickback and frustration when the monetization system changes. Like you made a reference to like if Amazon all of a sudden started managing and publishing Final Fantasy 14, that would be like a really big concern because there is something that could be really
Sure.
lost in risk. And the same kind of concept comes is like, hey, I bought this game or I've been playing this game and it's been great, right? Like if all of a sudden within New World, if they just say, hey, yeah, now there's a subscription if you want to keep playing. Like, oh, wait. Like you said that they're like I could buy and I could play this game as much as I want. That would be something that would have like a very adverse reaction. Whether you get over that reaction or not is depending on your relationship to the game, the character, and more. But I think it's more important to avoid those kind of pivots. And so to have a clear understanding of what your game is and how it's monetized so that anybody stepping into it knows the relationship. There's no shock factor value that where like in Diablo Immortal, then you get to end game and then like you beat and then it's like, oh, now we have this and now we have this and now we have this.
Just
Wait
tell
a
me what
minute,
you
like
want up front. Just tell me what you want up front.
yeah,
Like
define the relationship.
I would
Yeah,
much rather that charity banquet be, would you like to purchase a steak dinner with your wife for $50 and it's going to support this cause? And I can say, well, a steak, it doesn't cost $50, but it goes to a good cause. I would much rather that. As opposed to this, like going over to your house and you say welcome. And then at each step you go, hey, so the wine was a little expensive. Could you pitch in?
you chip in.
Whoa.
Could you Venmo? Could you Venmo?
Whoa.
Whoa, hey,
And
what?
so like, whoa, this isn't what I didn't show
Hey,
up.
Chris, come over. I'm gonna treat you like a king. I'm gonna treat you like a king.
And then I get some bill halfway through the
Yeah.
night, and then again at the end of the night, and then again you call me 2 weeks later and you go, "Hey, so the electric bill
Just
showed up, and I kind of need you to help." And it's like,
help out. Like,
dude,
wait.
I don't
No.
want to go to your dinner anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
Lalafell says, I want to touch on this as a final point before we give away these codes. Lalafell says, I feel like free to play is now equal pay to win these days. It's so rare to see a free to play game that is, to be fair, that is not pay to win. And where I like this is where these terms become so vague and personal. When we talked about gamers in this regards, I've seen people try to label Final Fantasy 14 as pay to win. I've seen people try to label any kind of thing as a pay to win, kind of flag, as because everybody's going to have that perspective. If your definition of winning ends up being something that is locked behind a paywall, then yes, automatically that's going to be connected. Traditionally, I always associate it with pay for power, like, oh, I can spend money and I can get more powerful. That ends up being where I would personally say jump potions and things like that are borderline, because we've seen people abuse those aspects. And so I personally choose to not engage with those systems and reward them financially, but everybody's going to end up having their own kind of value driven thing. My preference is always going to be upfront asking for some kind of money, but I think market, when you just look at the market overall, it is clear the winner that ends up being that free to play, not asking for anybody up front, really hits mass market really, really fast. And if you have a good game hook, like you take those two things and you can end up, instead of putting a limit on the money that you can make for making a game, you can make the amount of money you can make for a game near unlimited.
I mean, it definitely feels like free to play rides that line. They definitely ride the line. A jump potion that gets you to the current content, but then you still have to beat the current content, is very different than a jump potion that puts you in current end game with a decent set of gear. And yet both are labeled a jump potion. And so it's going to be very execution based. So when I look to what this is, Amazon Game Services is the publisher for Lost Ark, and Lost Ark has a lot of these mechanics. When you look at playing Lost Ark stateside, which has been well received, which is crazy because some of the public faces, since those are the voices that are easiest to hear, some of the public voices that have really been big proponents of Lost Ark and really enjoyed Lost Ark were people that were really frustrated at some of the very same monetization practices when they're done by different companies. And so it definitely says like context matters, because if you just remove that statement on its own, it looks like they're contradicting themselves. And I don't feel that they think they are. I don't think they're losing sleep overnight at feeling hypocritical. I think they feel like, no, I do think it's okay. If my friend makes fun of my hair, I don't think it's okay if a stranger makes fun of my hair. One hurts my feelings and the other one I laugh at. And so I think they're saying, I trust this company to have gotcha systems, and I don't trust this company to have gotcha systems. And so it may come out as I don't like gotcha systems and I like this game, and those look like they're conflicting, but it's really about trust. And so hopefully it's handled like Lost Ark, where they can make things more regionally appropriate. That can have a lot to do with, you got to work within the laws. You got to work within what the market wants. You know, a country that internet access and computer access is more traditionally enjoyed in a LAN cafe, it makes more sense for a subscription to be something that you buy hours, as opposed to a country where everybody has a personal device and constant internet access and prefers to binge hard in certain sessions to maybe sell monthly access. And then it maybe makes sense somewhere else to sell it in pre-purchased and it's offline play. And so like having regionally appropriate strategies makes sense. Prices can also vary wildly. The heads of Dwarf Fortress, they've had immense success, and they just reduce their prices in certain regions that have been hit by hyperinflation. And because they said, hey, just raw currency conversion isn't quite getting us there. So we're going to further reduce prices in a couple of currencies to make sure that people in those regions can afford our game at what we feel is a fair price. And that's just something each publisher has to navigate. And that comes down to trust. So, but yeah, that was my takeaway. Everything else was like, it was just, it's going to be a game, and the game's going to have content in it, and the content is being put out generically. So like, is it going to be on servers versus one server? Am I going to be able to play with a lot of people in a zone or a few? 30. Is that a lot or a little to you? Your call. Right. What are the kinds of things I'm doing? And they show an example of here's the kinds of things you're doing. And so like, those are just general like box statements. Like when you pick up a box back in a store, when we used to do that, and you read the back, it's just a description of what the gameplay loop is going to entail. There's nothing there that tells you if it's going to be good or bad, or if it's going to be something you've never played before, or rehash of a system you're very familiar with. Overall, I think most of the people's concern with Blue Protocol is going to be, is there going to be a lot of content on launch, or is there going to be consistent content after that? And how much money and how often are you going to ask for money? Yeah. Call of Duty is a $75 game, and the Battle Pass didn't release week one. I really appreciated that compared to some of the previous iterations of Call of Duty, where it felt like, or Halo Infinite, which feels weird that Halo Infinite frustrates me more than Call of Duty. As a franchise, I think Call of Duty has a history with being over monetized, and Halo, I played Halo 5 for like 10 billion hours, and they never, like, they had a loot box system that didn't matter. I've gotten everything from their loot box system naturally, except for the voices, and I don't even know what those do. And so, like, Call of Duty released a full game and then asked for money. Halo released a battle pass system, and it has yet to be a full game. So, like, I think, where is Blue Protocol going to fall in that? Are they going to start asking for money day one? Or are they saying, okay, we've dropped the game, let's get all the bugs fixed. After everybody's having a good time, I might come around with a collection plate and see if you want to put something in.
Yeah. To fund the game. To, you know, and gamers will, if the game is good, they'll happily say, oh yeah, this is great. You're not, you know, going through my pockets. Sure, I can chip in. Oh, I can get something cool from that. It's a great relationship in that regards. And that is how you build trust. Now, on that note, let's go ahead and give away 2 copies of Embers Adrift when we talk about monetization. It's a buy-to-play subscription-based game. I have 2 free copies. If you don't win and you're interested in that game, they're not really advertising it. I've been playing it. It's an interesting experiment.
It's young. It's
young, but it's old. October? Like it's young, but it's old because it's like old school. You know, like you die alone, you survive together, kind of, you know, MMO. But it does have nice features in which that, like, it will tell you this mob is really built for a party. This mob, yeah, you could probably take it solo based off your level. So it does give you a little bit of indicators where, like, old school, you'd have to kind of hit it to find out if you'd win. But yeah, so Embers Adrift, it's a PC based MMORPG. I've got 2 free copies. Chris, if you would fire up Nightbot for Twitch, we can give 1 copy on YouTube, 1 copy on Twitch. And for those of you on YouTube, if you'd like to have an opportunity to win it, type in gift into chat, GIFT. And if you type that into the YouTube chat, it will enter you in here, and we'll roll that here in a second.
Same on Twitch.
Oh, same on Twitch. And so if you type in gift on Twitch, it will enter you in there as well. So awesome. And then we're going to let that kind of populate for a little bit while we kind of wind down.
I haven't played it. There have been people dropping comments like saying that, like, they're really enjoying it. It's a young game. And so like, I think new games are fun. I've been enjoying Dragonflight, and people have said like, well, what about frustrations over, 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago when they did something bad? And it's like, what's new? Like, let that go. From the same standpoint, I've seen people coming in and talking about how much they're loving Embers Adrift, and that's wonderful. But then they've said like, this is an example of what Final Fantasy needs to do with 7.0. And it's like, well, those are kind of two different animals. Like, it's not fair to talk about what a game needs to do in like year 11 versus in month 3. I understand that right now it has no microtransaction store. I don't know if that will stay true for all of history. I think you'd have to be from the future to know that. I've said the same about New World. When people are like, what I love about it is that, it doesn't have any catch-up systems in it. Like World of Warcraft, where you have legacy systems that don't matter anymore and you skip over them. It's like, well, yeah, that makes sense with an 18-month-old game. Like, WoW didn't have those for the first 18 months either. Give it time. So, there are games like Guild Wars that have proven they have 10 years of not rewriting old content too heavily, that help give me trust that when an expansion launches in Guild Wars, it truly is lateral. And there's 10 years of history that tells me not to believe that Dragonflight won't just fall by the wayside when we go in 11.0, and to just enjoy that for what it is. It's like summer camp. It's fun while it happened. It will end. And so it'll be interesting to see the direction Embers Adrift goes. I'm really glad that people are still making new MMOs.
They're pushing out updates every week. They're on holiday break, so the next the next update actually will fall in January, is what they've said, and they've been kind of interesting. They've been detailing out like, hey, this is the things we're working on. It's all one server as well. Like, there's some interesting things, and I've been talking to them about controller support because that's something that's important to me. And oddly enough, the sticks work. Nothing else does, and I've been trying everything I could to get it to work. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll just toy around with it for now. So, the publishers like the fact that I keep talking about it. I was like, yeah, it's interesting. Like, there's a general fascination with this game because essentially, in my mind, to kind of put a bow on it, it's my oh, you want an old school hardcore MMO, but there's not any good ones? Put up or shut up. Like, if this, like, you don't have to end up liking this game, but if you're not willing to give it a try, and yet you're going to continue to tell me like, oh man, MMOs were like, I wish they would make a brand new version of this, or like Ragnarok or Final Fantasy 11. It's like, give this a shot, put up or shut up. Because if all that is, if you're like, oh yeah, I want that, but not that one, are you going to try it? No. Like, dude, you're
if a future developer is thinking about making one of those games and they're approaching VC for funding or something like that to get them over that line and have servers and all that, or they're thinking about running a Kickstarter and they're starting to give out whatever to get people on board that can help them get it to the finish line, and then they go, hey, so I looked it up and 100 games like this have released and they've all failed. Why would they keep going? So it is important. I agree with you. It is important. If a
market
game
shows,
if you
nobody
ask
wants
for something. If you ask for something and then game developers give it to you, the courteous thing is to take a sample off the tray and take a bite. If you can't go take a bite, then I don't know why they made it. And so, like, I see people that are very frustrated with the direction maybe AAA studios have gone or something like that, but then they won't buy indies. It's like, well, you have your chance. So it's why you and I said, with Criterion and stuff, it's like, we have to try this because we've been asking for it for years. We have to try it.
We have to try it.
Because, you don't have to like it. You're not obligated to like the execution, but you are obligated to try it because you specifically went out of your way requesting it. We only had a chance to ask a handful of questions to Yoshi P in person over the years, and Criterion was one of them. And so, like, you had been looking at taking a break from 14 for a little bit, but with Criterion on the horizon, you're like, well, I'm going to wait and try Criterion because I didn't ask for something 5 years ago so that 2 weeks before it comes out, I could say,
yeah. All right.
So
yeah, absolutely. Now I'm gonna go ahead and roll it over here on YouTube. We got a couple of entries, so chances are, Skackaret, you're the winner. I don't think YouTube lets me directly message you like you would on Twitch. So would you hit me up on Discord? All right, and then I can Kuroko, if you would say
message to Kuroko.
I can direct message it in there, so I can send Kuroko their code. So if you would say hi, Kuroko, I will send you your DM for your code. And Skackaret, unfortunately, you gotta just DM me on Discord. You can use the command Discord. Check the links in the description. I am Del Monte B on there, or listed under as Brian under the admin section. And you should be able to freely DM me if we don't already have a DM thing going. All right,
Hopefully you guys enjoy.
Yes, and let me send you your code, and then that way we can wrap up. And what are you working on the rest of the day, sir?
I'm gonna finish the last 5 quests after Warring Triad, and then I'm gonna watch this Jesse Cox Jailer versus End Singer video.
Excellent.
And then you are playing tonight.
No, I have a family Christmas party, and so I will be probably do some stuff on Saturday. But then I've been playing Wednesdays, and then I'll be next Friday, which should be a lot of fun, unless something happens.
I'm gonna play New World next Friday, and I believe you're playing New World next Friday. So we'll be a New World channel on Friday. Next week, I'm doing Void Ark and Alexander as my 2 days. I'd also like to play Guild Wars a little bit during the week, and some more World of Warcraft as I slowly get geared up. Maybe see if I can slot in with one of these brilliant players that are running community 14 player events and stuff. So I've seen like Ren and them have been running some Mythic Plus, and if they're just letting viewers hop in with them, I'd love to hop in and run some Mythic with them and give it a shot. I'm only in like I-340. I really need to be in like the 350s before I can. So I got a little ways to go, but I'm getting there.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, so much for tuning into the show. We'll be live again next Monday at 11:30 to 12:30 Central. We're going to be talking about Final Fantasy XIV's next hype cycle, 2023 kind of year in future review, to kind of talk about some of the things about hype and how it works within Final Fantasy XIV, because we're seeing a traditional cycle within kind of player feedback and mood. So we figured we'd kind of talk about that. Also, I'd like to, we will put the topic of censorship in video games coming up. That might be our Tuesday show. And then who knows, like Chris has been throwing me some suggestions for topics. So if you guys have suggestions for topics, leave them in the comments, hit us up on Discord. Maybe we could bring the wheel back in 2023. I don't know, to be able to sit here and get some of that rocking and rolling for you guys. I'm going to hit end broadcast over here on the YouTube side, but Chris will continue on over on Twitch. So go hang out with him, and we will see you on Monday.